All right, so we have Lucinda, we have Jessica, we have Dan, and we have Pierce. We have people here who are new members of our church. We have people who have been here and around for a much longer time. We have people who are engaged in the life of our church here, people who are engaged in the life of our wider conference. So hopefully we're going to hear a little bit about that as well here. So we're just going to have a conversation, and you get to listen in on that conversation. Nothing more fun than listening in on conversations, right? So we're going to do that just now. And I've given you all a few questions, and whoever wants to speak first to any of these questions, please just hold out your hand and ask for the microphone, and please feel free to respond to them. But I want to know today, and we want to know today, in your life, what has it meant to be a follower of Jesus in this Wesleyan way that we've been talking about? So who wants to go first with that? Pierce has got it.
Well, I was raised in a Methodist church. My mother was a secretary treasurer and looked after all the Sunday schools. My father taught a Sunday school class, men's class for 50 years. So I just felt like I was born as a Methodist and as a Christian.
It's in your bones, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it just, as I grew into it, so many people just couldn't realize why I was so much a part of the church, and I thoroughly enjoyed it all my life. As always, as I've gone through life, I've made wrong decisions and wrong turns, but it's always come to me to come back. Like my parents always taught me. I know when I went off to college, my father got to me and he said, "Son, I know we raised you best we can. I know you're going to college and you're going to go down some roads you shouldn't go. And hopefully you will have enough experience with us and Christianity that you can turn around and come back before you go too far."
Sounds just like that prodigal son that we were just reading about in the scriptures there. And what about anyone else want to just sort of give us a few words about how this Wesleyan way of Christian faith has been part of your life?
Well, I'm also cradle, or I also say I have an extra chromosome which has an M on it. And so Methodist through and through. And I guess when I thought about this question, I remember I went to Santa Claus Camp. Yep, that's a place in Indiana. Wow. Santa Claus, Indiana. And that's where a Methodist camp was. So we call it Santa Claus Camp. And but that was, I truly remember it was a camp meeting, and which was very Wesleyan, and a revival, but also a wonderful camp for kids. And my mother actually was the camp nurse there, so I was there many, many summers. But there at the camp, we would go to the tabernacle, and we'd sing, and it was just a wonderful time. But I do remember taking communion there one time, and it was life-changing. So, that's how the Wesleyan tradition has been so much a part of my life.
All right, Dan, how about you?
Well, I don't have a long history of Methodist or Wesleyan. My dad's family was Catholic, and my mother's family was Lutheran. And it was a much different feel than coming to a Methodist church. Also, my mother died when I was very young, and through a series of events, my dad kind of lost his faith, and we stopped going to church altogether. And I went a lot of years without being in church. My wife has always been a Methodist and has always had faith. And if it wasn't for her and for God, I would not be here. And when we had our first son, we decided that he needed to be able to make the choice. And the only way you can make a choice is to be informed. And so we said, we're going to take him to church. And we went to the Methodist church on Isle of Palms in South Carolina. And we walked in, and it was the very first time I'd ever gone in church and been hugged by somebody I was not related to.
Embracing widely, Dan, right?
Absolutely. And asked a million questions. We wanted to know all about us, and was invited to a Sunday school that very first day. And well, I always thought, in fact, I told Pastor Charlie this once, I thought that I was taking Zach, our son, to church back so he could know God. But it was actually, the whole time, it was God bringing me back to church. And through all that, every Methodist church we've been to, which is a bunch of them between the military and traveling in the country and stuff, I still get the same feeling every single time I walk through that door.
Awesome. Jessica, have you anything you would add quickly?
Yeah, sure. So I also am a cradle Methodist. My family is from South Georgia. I was born and raised here. My mother's family is from South Georgia. So Savannah, so John and Charles Wesley and Epworth, and we got some deep roots. But like you, with your son, which is beautiful, my parents were really good about letting me question, and I had questions at a really young age. And we visited. We went to the library. We looked up different Christian faiths. We looked up other world religions. It was a really beautiful experience. And I actually visited as many churches as we could. We went to the Islamic Center in Jacksonville. We did all these things, and I came back to the same conclusion that in Wesleyan faith, in a Christian Wesleyan faith, questions were allowed and questions were encouraged. And for me, that was what I needed. I knew that a faith and a God and a school of thought that encouraged thought and encouraged questions was not weak. In fact, it stood up and it was very strong. So, yeah.
Thank you. Hey, I wonder if any of you would have something that you would say to us about. So we've heard about your introductions, but what is it about this Wesleyan way of Christian faith that has actually shaped your faith as you sit here today? What are the bits and pieces that have actually shaped and brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, I think it's small group. It's meeting together weekly with this group of people, and it's done. And we have so many ways of doing it in Wesleyan tradition, because not just Sunday schools. I consider ensemble when we get together every Monday. That is a small group.
That's right.
We pray. We ask about what each other's doing. We are invested in each other. And I know the choir is the same way. I know the studies that we do at night. To me, that, because your sermons are wonderful.
Well, thank you.
And
I feel a butt coming on here.
But you don't usually want us to raise our hand and ask questions during your sermon.
I mean,
it takes a long time. I get it. But once we get together, then we can share all those questions and we can grow together in our faith. And I think that's big.
Thank you, Dan. Pierce.
Well, to me, the main thing is doing for others. I know I was always in the landscaping and lawn maintenance business in several churches I've been part of. I did the outside, looked after the facilities and everything, and that was part of me that I thoroughly enjoyed doing. But I came here, and the first work day they had here, Bonnie and I came, and we came up after about an hour's work, and I said, I physically can't do this anymore. When you turn 80, it makes a big difference in how much you can do outside of what you can't. But then I kept looking, and Stephen, our Sunday school teacher, he's been a Stephen minister for a long time, and I looked at it and thought about it, and I said, that's something I can do without being physically. So I took the course. Now, it's tough. It's a long course, but it was very good, and I got a lot out of it. And now I've got my first care receiver that I go and see weekly, and it really makes me feel good. I can do something now without having to physically take part of and do it. At my age, I have to slow down just a little bit.
Thank you, Pierce. Anything else that we would add just about what it is about the way of Wesleyan faith that has shaped your faith today?
Again, referring back to my family and how I was raised, truly the Wesleyan rules of life. Do all you can by all the means you can, so on and so forth, truly is what shaped my life, and I tried to live that.
Thank you. All right. Well, listen, I want to move us to sort of all these questions, as I've said to each of you, are sort of moving to this last one, because I think it's always good for us to be able to say, this is where I came from, this is what happened in years gone by or days gone by. But at the core of the Wesleyan faith is this idea that God is embracing us widely and takes us on a journey of transformation, or as we call it in the theological books, sanctification, right? So, and that means that's how we're being transformed by Christ today and every day. So I wanted to ask you those questions: is how is this Wesleyan way of faith transforming you today, this season in your life, right now? Would anyone speak to that?
Holding the mic, so I'll start. Yeah. So I think it's an ongoing, it's ongoing, right? Like, I am not the same person I was yesterday. I'm a stream. You know, you can't step into the same stream twice. And so for me, I am transformed in little ways every day. It adds up. And it's as simple as asking, I have a covenant group, and we ask each other, how is it with your soul? And it's a genuine question. We really want to know, how is it with your soul? It's the first thing we ask each other. And stopping to think deeply beyond just the, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm great, how are you? And moving on, pausing to think about, how is it with my soul? And then listening when I'm asking them, and being it's an intentional community. And so for that transformation, as someone who I'm an introvert. I know people don't believe me when I tell them that, but I'm an introvert. It is exhausting for me to be with people. I love them, but it is exhausting. And having that intentional time, space, and honestly format is so good for me. It transforms who I am and how I act with other people and how I interact with them.
Who else? Pierce? Yep.
Well, I think being a Stephen minister has meant more to me to be able to do for others. Because we not only, the course taken to become one is very difficult, very long, very worthwhile. But we meet twice a month and we talk about different things and we try to help each other, and then you start getting care receivers, and then it makes you think about, I live in a retirement community that, well, this person's having a good time. Maybe I can just go talk to them. Maybe I can do a little bit to help them. And it gives you the want to reach out to other people to try to help them in their life.
So as you are living out your calling, Pierce, by training to be a Stephen minister, not only are you being that companion through the ministries of this church, but where you live, you're also noticing that there may be other opportunities for you to connect with people.
Oh yes, you got, everywhere you go, you think about it, there's always somebody that needs some help. Whether it's a little bit or a lot, or it's just speaking to or being kind to, but it's always something you can do to try to reach out to someone else.
Wow, thank you. Dan, how about you?
Well, in the spring, when I was one of the studies that we did over in Maxwell Hall, and we talked about prayer and daily prayer and all the ways that we can pray, and it really got me back into a daily devotion and a prayer time and a prayer list that I keep of all these things and people that I pray for. And the list, and every once in a while I think about, well, maybe it's time to take somebody off the list, and I think, well, maybe I shouldn't take anybody off the list. I should be praying for them. But I know that through that devotion and that prayer every day, it makes me look at every single person I see differently. And in fact, I would say this in Sarah's children's moment, maybe not the right word, but the moment, when she said that one of the things the word was today was you can always come home to God. Because there's lots of times, and I think of even Charles Wesley, or John Wesley, who had his moment of crisis of faith, but he, you do what my wife keeps telling me to do, is to fake it till you make it. You pray it till it's you, and but all of that's only possible through the Wesleyan education and training and life.
Thanks, Dan. Lucinda, would you add anything more there?
Just a little bit. About 3 years ago, I was involved with my covenant group, and we studied every week the whole Wesleyan prayer. And each week we took a sentence and we really dwelled into it. So I think that was where I decided that the deaconess path was going to be a good path for me. And as the prayer says, I'm no longer my own, but I am thine. And I love that. That's the opening. So please look it up and read it.
Yeah, that's the Wesleyan Covenant Prayer. We've talked about that here before. Jessica, I have a specific question for you. So Jessica, I don't know if you know this, Jessica is our district co-lay leader. She is also one of the conference lay leaders as well. And maybe because our lay involvement is not only on the local level in our own neighbourhoods and churches, but actually we are connected one with the other in United Methodism. So Jessica, just really briefly, because we've got to have communion too this morning, tell us a little bit about just how lay voices are in that whole sort of conference connection business of our church.
So yes, I do sit on our district committee, our district leadership team with Pastor Charlie, but I'm on there with my two co-lay leaders for the Northeast District, and I also sit on the conference board of laity as an associate conference lay leader, meaning I help Derek and Warren a lot with communications. The thing that I see, the way the connection works, not just here locally, because we see our Love Shows Up shirts, right? We put them on, we go out into the community, people see those red shirts. They know who we are because we keep showing up in the community to serve. That happens throughout not just Bernardina, not just Yulee, not just Nassau County, not just the Northeast District, but conference-wide. People show up. A really good example of that is hurricanes. We had some churches in our Southwest District that were devastated. And people call United Methodist, showed up with pallets of water. They showed up with food. They showed up with work gloves. They showed up for people they had never met, and they came from all over, not just Florida, but they were in our disaster recovery team. They came from as far away as Washington State. They came from all over, and you might be thinking, well, yeah, so they're just volunteers. No, they felt connected. They are connected through our conferences, through the work that we do, through the study that we do together. We're getting ready to do this Wesleyan Rooted study conference-wide. And those kinds of studies lead to, again, asking questions and feeling connected. You're having these conversations. You're having these moments of deep thought, deep feeling, deep connection. And it's not just locally. It is spread across the whole country, honestly, across the globe. We've, General Conference, and you got to go to General Conference. General Conference it was such an amazing opportunity to see not just clergy connecting, but lay people across oceans, across miles and miles and miles, people who would never cross each other's paths during a normal course of their day. And coming together to work together. So connection, it's huge.
Thank you. Friends, thank you so much. I wish we had longer. I wish we had more time. I wish we could listen to everybody's story. But what we wanted to achieve this morning is for you all to be reminded that as a part of the Methodist movement, part of this Wesleyan way of Christian faith, means that Methodists don't just sit in pews and listen. Okay? we be connected to one another. We get up and we serve in the world in all the ways that we can, doing all the good that we can. And we realize that at our core, we're no longer just our own, but we belong to God, and that we are sent by God into all places and spaces with the great love of God, to share it broadly and to share it in a way that invites this kind of transformation that we've been hearing about today. So would you thank our friends that were very brave to get up here today, as you guys can return to your seats.